One common type of trust is called a grantor retained annuity trust, or a Grat. What exactly is a Grat, and how does it work? Well, before going any further, some background. During your lifetime, you're allowed to give a certain amount away to other people without that gift getting taxed by the federal government. This is called your lifetime gift tax exemption. And the number varies from year to year, but if you take 2012, it was a little over $5 million. So knowing that, consider this scenario. Let's say you wanted to give a gift to your kids. If you wanted to, you could give it to them directly. But let's say that you had already used up your lifetime gift tax exemption. Well, something kind of annoying would happen. This person would step right in the middle and demand a tax. This is the federal government. And because this is considered a gift, they would charge a gift tax, which historically has ranged from 35% to 55%. So the bottom line is that's a lot of money that could go in Uncle Sam's pockets instead of your kids. So this is where a Grat comes in. What a Grat lets you do is transfer wealth to your kids or your other beneficiaries, avoid paying gift tax in the process, and the way it's structured, you can also keep some money for yourself. So here's how it works. Let's say that you set up a 5-year Grat. You would likely put some high potential upside asset in there. So maybe a potentially high-growing stock in there. And the way the trust is structured, it would pay you an annuity, an annual payment every year for 5 years. And then, at the end of all this, if there's anything left over in this Grat, that amount would pass on to your kids or your beneficiaries free of gift tax. That sounds easy enough. So what's the catch? Well, the catch is there's a certain amount you're required to take back every year. Otherwise, you could just say, you know what, I'm going to take back $1 every year so that virtually everything is going to pass on to my kids. So the question is, well, who determines how much you have to take back? Well, the answer is it's the IRS. And what the IRS does is every month they set what's commonly thought of as a hurdle rate. Think of this as the amount that they expect your trust is going to grow every year. So here's another way of looking at it. You've got your original trust like this with its asset in there. And then the IRS sets maybe a 3% hurdle rate, which means over the course of the 5-year Grat, they think the trust is going to grow to this size. Well, the way it works out, you have to ultimately take back in those 5 annual payments an amount equal to this much. But it prompts an interesting question. What happens if this trust grows more than that hurdle rate? Well, if that's the case, you still have to take back this much. But this part, this excess appreciation, passes on to your kids or your beneficiaries free of gift tax. So here's a concrete example. You set up a $10 million trust with some very hopefully fast-growing stock. The IRS sets a hurdle rate at 3%, which means they think that this Grat is going to grow to $11.6 million in 5 years. But let's say that that stock actually returns 7% every year. Well, if that's the case, the Grat would actually grow to $14 million, which means you would have to ultimately take back all of these annuity payments, $11.6 million worth. But then this excess amount, this $2.4 million, would pass on to your kids free of gift tax. But see, this prompts another interesting question, which is, what happens if the trust doesn't clear that hurdle rate? What if it actually declines in value, or maybe it only goes up a little bit like this? Well, if that's the case, you still have to take all of this back. And your kids don't get anything. But it's worth noting that neither you nor your kids would be much worse off than if you had never set it up to begin with the exception of the minor, maybe administrative costs of setting it up. So knowing this about a Grat, here are a couple things to remember. The first is, Grats are especially attractive when hurdle rates are low. Now remember, this hurdle rate, the lower it is, the less hard your stocks or bonds or whatever asset is has to work to clear that. And the thing that makes this work is that excess appreciation. And as part of this, that leads to the second thing, which is assets with high return potential are best. If you put, say, a bond that's very safe and it's only yielding 3% a year for you, that's probably not going to clear that hurdle rate by very much. But if you put, say, a stock that has really great potential in it, then you could pass on a lot more wealth to your kids. So that's why generally you want to choose assets with high return potential. And finally, it's worth knowing that you have to survive the Grat. If you set up say a 5-year Grat, but you pass away 2 years into it, then the Grat cancels or it dissolves. And so that's another thing worth considering. But the bottom line is that a Grat is a tool that helps you to pass on wealth to your kids or other beneficiaries, avoid paying gift tax in the process, and also keep money for yourself.